Free.
Joshua. Man katabattab mas nakas. Iman katabattaman. Manda. Isha takwa manda ikunanam danan sabunagak. This is one story I've carried around for about 50 years. I probably heard about it when I was 7 years old, and these elders used to tell stories of long ago. And we never had no electricity, no running water, no TV. Our main source of entertainment was elders sitting around in a circle telling of stories. And this I heard when I was about 7 years old, and I've carried it around. And this story I recorded this last year, and it just finished doing it about 6 weeks ago. And this involves with probably Earth Day, and a lot of the stories about a raccoon becoming a house pet. And this will also tell you that human beings can share this world with animals. And this is what the story is all about. And my grandfather and his two friends, I think they spent 2 hours telling up the story, but I made it as short as I can. So this is how it began years ago, and I finally brought it to the University of Michigan, which is, I didn't plan to be there, but somebody planned that trip for me, so I'm there this year. So to be here with just people is an honor, and the speaker, it's also a great honor to hear other speakers from Kamek on the other side of the world. Nimanda, this is how Nishnabemwen works. We always describe people who they are in the language, like Anma is German, and Jugjat Teganina is African American, and Shodanina is Jew. That's how we were raised. We were raised to talk of people in their nationalities. And it took years. It took probably years for people to put these people in their proper place in the language or proper place in the race. But it has been done. That's how far along this language has come along with us too. And I'm from Ontario, Canada, Manitoulin Island. And originally my great-great-grandparents came from Wisconsin, which is Epigishmak, a little west of here. And they settled there in Manitoulin. During the removal of a lot of native people were removed to Oklahoma. A lot of, I guess my ancestors moved to Ontario in that period of time too, so they took off from whatever they were running from. And another part of my family came from New Orleans. And they ended up in southern Ontario. So my mother, as we say, she was the leader in my house. She was the boss. My dad's being the big boss. He was the big boss outside, but his being a boss stopped at the front door and the back door. My mom did all the bossing in the house, and so did with the voting of the chief or the councilors. My mom told my dad how to vote. And she was an Iroquois. That's why she was strict in them rules. She was strict in a lot of ways like that. She was very, very proud of her ways, or her race. And to speak of people like that, my grandfather was an Iroquois. And, I used to hear my grandfather talk to other people. And he passed away when I was about 10. I lost that language when I was 10. And I picked up a lot of Ojibwe. Not Ojibwe, Ojibwe. And to be here today is, this is all Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Odawa country. And it's, I'm proud to be here today. And I heard of a speaker from out west last night. last name is Crane. I was very happy to hear him speak the language, and I was happy to sit at the same table as him. And I was very happy to hear him speak my language. And there's another writer that's sitting in this very room today, which he's from Minnesota, and to be able to be in the same room with him is an honor too. And to do this kind of work today is, it's a wake-up experience for me as an Anishinaabe. And as an Anishinaabe person, I came across 3 ladies last year that walked along the shores of Lake Superior. And to do that, I guess it took a lot of strength, a lot of hardships, a lot of rainstorms, a lot of sunshine, and it's too hot. I could describe all that weather that came through in my language, which is very nice. You could describe anything in my language. My language is what you see is what you talk about. And it was very interesting to talk with the ladies last year. And I hear a talk, they're going to walk around Lake Michigan. Michigan. What I said was, they're going to walk around Lake Michigan. Now, these ladies must have a lot of heart. I don't think I'd be brave enough to do 10 miles of that. I'd be thinking of my poor feet. But to do this, I think it takes a lot of heart, a lot of help from other people. And people like us, we got to help them along too. And here's another guy that just walked in. In my travels, I've met him here and there. He seems like he's almost like Jesus. Everywhere I go, he's there. It's my friend from Brindley, Michigan, and he's quite a character too. He's not a joker like Jim here. He's a photographer. He takes pictures, and for everywhere I've been, he's always done that. And I don't know if he's got any room to live in his house. That's why he's always out here. He's probably got too much pictures in there. And here are my colleague from work. That's Margaret Norrie. And my 2 little troublemakers. They're my buddies. They're my little pals in my work today. One time when I first came around last year, I was doing something on the table. I was busy doing something, and I told her, question, don't dump. Question, don't dump. I was telling her that in the language. That's all I said. Half an hour later, I was done with what I was doing, maybe 45 minutes later, and she was in the living room floor playing with her dollhouse. And I go, Annie, Fiona. She gets up off her knees and looks at me. Question, Howard, don't dump. She heard that once and she kept it. She says, leave me alone, I'm busy. Little things like that kids pick up. When my mom said that to me when I was that age, I didn't pick it up. I had a hard time understanding right from wrong when I was that age. And same with her too. I think she knows me from way back. And Magani is gonna explain some of this language here, how it's written. You see 3 lines. And I think she'll be glad to explain that.
So, hope this is working. We have a rather informal presentation. Bonjour, Magani Indigenous, Minnesota and Donjaba, Wapjeji and Dodam, Ndansak Shannon, Mina Fiona. And what I do is I teach at University of Michigan with Howard. And what we wanted to do was combine a little bit about what we learned about teaching the language in this time, because there are difficulties of this time that are very much like the Earth Day difficulties. So the way everybody's gathered here these 2 days talking about how do we save the Earth, most of the time we're talking about how do we save our language. And it's not as easy as just finding an answer at all. It involves all kinds of things. It involves, making friends of different generations, trying to keep those different generations together. Our travels up here are a great example of that, because you talk about, having 3 generations in one small car for 6 to 8 hours, and there's an adventure. And when we teach our students at the University of Michigan, I wore my shirt because it was something that we did to just make it fun for everyone at school. So the shirt says, Winish, what does it say? Ijada Gijagawande, which is, of course, let's go blue, which is what in Michigan we all say. We all have a lot of school spirit in Ann Arbor. And then on the back, though, it says Chapitanem Dvendagazajik, which means respect the locals. So we're teaching the language, but we're also teaching all 200 students on that campus to think about that Fort Meigs Treaty a long time ago. Our institution is a land-grant institution that started as a gift from the Native people. And there was an agreement that the Native people would continue to be educated and be a part of that community. And so that's what we try to remind them, to use the language, but to use it to bring communities together. And so we have this story that we both wanted to talk about a little bit. As Howard said, it's a story that had come to him and was told many different ways, some much longer versions. The version that he tells, what's interesting about it is that we made a CD where he simply tells the story. And I think comparing our work in languages to the work with Indigenous land issues, to tell the story in that way that the elders would tell it, with all of the expression, with the intonation, with the metaphors that are Indigenous, not translating it from an English version to noun equivalents or anything that would sound very English, but to tell it in the right way is very much like living the way they're talking, living on the country in the right way, not just on the surface. So we tried to capture that. Howard tells it in here, and we have the CD in the back of it, and you hear his version, which his dialect is very fast. Like I said, Minnesota and Donjaba, so I come over from Pongishimak in the west, where we speak much slower. I know I speak faster now, for sure. But you hear him just tell that story, and it was an oral process. And then it took us months to transcribe it. So we put it in here with 3 lines, which is something for learners. And when we were thinking about this conference, again, there's parallels to this work that I see people doing with the land. Bucko and everybody uses Bucko as an example because he's sitting there, and I guess I know him. But other people in this room may have also tried to learn to speak this language as adults, which is very hard. When you've been raised thinking English, and you've been raised in a world that thinks English and expects you to use those metaphors, those paradigms that start on the left and move in a line, everything about English is just embedded in your way of doing it. Whereas you cross somebody like Howard or Kenneth, and you start saying, I need to think differently. I need to think about a verb at the center of a word and then work my way around and create a longer word. You start thinking about the whole world differently. When they had that cracked land on the pictures, you start thinking about things as something that comes from the center, and there's lines that connect in ways you might not have expected. So in here, I'll just read a couple. I don't know, is there a spot that you like? I'll read just from the beginning a little bit, just as an example, so you can hear. Well, you shut that off. Gabakan, no? Gainjira. So the way we did it, it has 3 lines. So the story starts, Nin mandejin kare wadbadma esbaran skibirigoshin. And then we have right underneath that, literally, I, this, call it, we'll talk about, the little raccoon did here arrive. Which, if you're thinking in English, that sounds out of order. But if you do this often, you start to realize, and the students start to realize, I need to think differently. I need to put my pronouns in a different place. I need to attach them in a different order. I need to put my words and my thoughts in a different order. Now, so that people can understand that the story is as beautiful as anything that we could say in English, we'll put an English line in there, too, that would say, this story that I will tell you is called The Little Raccoon Who Arrived Here. So we have all three lines there. So you start to hear it and start to learn not only the words, word for word, what they are, but then you also start to learn a different way of thinking and a different way of describing the world and thinking about the story. So I'll read a few more, and I'm just going to read you the Anishinaabe one because that's the best line, and then the old straight English underneath it because you all can imagine how to think it in English as your grammar school teachers would have thought it. So, 50 years ago is how long this happened. Gundak Ginwa Ishkonaguning, Gundak Kekayak Gibiyawak. Kianzi, Mina Bejik Mindamoyas. These ones on the reservation, these elders were there, an old man and an old lady. And you can already see in the start of that sentence that you're being told something, and then you're being told it again in a little slightly different way. And I think that's something that also reflects that old way of teaching. So when they tell us things about the land, or about the earth, or about the little old lady and the little old man in this story, you get used to hearing it maybe once, maybe again, slightly different way. In English, somebody would have edited that out, So in English, we're taught to be linear and chronological and think in a different way. So what we've got to start capturing, besides just learning a whole bunch of Ojibwe or Anishinaabe, it's the same, you can use either one for the language. Besides learning the vocabulary, we've got to learn how to think differently. Otherwise, we're just going to be sort of grammar school, or as Howard likes to say, if we depend too much on the book and on the writing, we can become just paper Indians, and we aren't thinking, we aren't understanding, we aren't hearing the stories in the way that they should be told. So I'll finish this little page for you, and then maybe we'll let Ken talk a little bit too, and then go through what's on your handouts there. Gashkanap chagagondak, gego gi nisidnaan, gona. Geje gi nisidok, gona gego. Mi gona gi bi bimadziat, mi goetta, wigwamas, gayam wat minabangi kitgan. They were very poor, these ones. They didn't own anything. The way it was is that they owned nothing. But here they were living in their little house, and they had a small garden. So just hearing that story that way gets you to start thinking differently about how do I start a story? Because as you can tell from the cover and the title, it's obviously a story about a raccoon and the raccoon arriving into their lives and how that raccoon moves out of their lives. But you have to first get to know them. You have to first enter that story in a different way, in a way that's unlike the way that we would probably be taught to think about telling stories in English. So that story was one thing that we wanted to talk about. We have some pictures and things, and on your handout what we have were phrases that relate real specifically to some lessons related to Earth Day. But Ken, I know you had a urgent issue come up, and we already kind of introduced ourselves, but maybe we'll give you the mic for a minute or two if you want to say a few things about Earth Day here at Northern. I don't know.
Honey, bonjour, Dancy, Sego. Ke. Somebody was describing Ke. Who was it? Gary, his presentation. Ke, A-K-I. That's the land, or the earth, or the soil, which includes the rock, the pebbles, the stones, and whenever you're toiling in your garden, or if you come from a background of farmers or gardening, you like to put in a garden every spring this time of year, you always pay respect to a ke. A ke, by association, is the provider, the nurturer, as in all women of this planet are nurturers. They carry the life, they bring life, they suckle their children, or they used to, and so that's why a ke has a special reverence and meaning to Anishinaabe Native America. And even for those that weren't brought up in the Anishinaabe way, there's text available that you've all have grown up with, at least in Northern America or North America, is earth to earth. So we all turn to dust eventually, is the wording there in that book. And I have been privy, as much of you, to that type of experience throughout my years. The second memory I have in life is going to a wake. And I was just a little holding my grandpa's hand. And so when we say we honor the Ke, if my grandpa, great-grandpa, great-grandma turn into dust and soil someplace over there on our farm where they used to bury our people, then that land adds on an extra layer of sacredness, because even if it's been plowed over the centuries, moved around, it is still sacred. It's like taking a dagger or a knife or a piece of glass and cut into myself, Ken, and that's going to hurt. So as we've heard already in this presentation, Ke is crying. We call our earth Ngusha. There is a plant called Wingush where we come from in this part of the country, and sweetgrass in the English translation. So Ngusha means my mother. That grass, when it grows tall in July, at least in this part, temperate climate, sways in the wind and serves to remind us as part of our mother. That's why we have a one plant named Ngusha. It is both ceremonial, it is both spiritual, it is both physical, it is both emotional. So we have this plant that I used to pick as a child, and it's very beautiful and smells very sweet. Sweet, not like overpowering perfumes you'll see at the supermarket or wherever perfumes are sold. It's very gentle yet pungent, grabbing type of grass that grows there. And when you pick it, you can smell it. Actually, you can smell it if you're downwind on a bright summer day. You can smell it, and that leads you to where the patch is. Well, some of our people are buried there, or their remains. Our people have been here thousands of years. So not only does the sweetgrass Wingush remind us of our biological and ancestral relations, it reminds us of our dependence and our relation to Mother Earth, and someday we'll be that dust, we'll be those bones. So Wingush has many special applications today, and that's that embroidery, I'll call it. Sometimes you'll see around handcrafted birch bark work our people make, and if you know what you're doing, you still know how to use that plant. Will still stay green once you take it up from the field, and it'll stay green for years, and it'll still smell fresh. My mother gave me her birch bark work years. She's been gone since '74, but she gave me a little piece of handiwork that she had made, and it still smelled of birch bark and the Wingush. So that plant serves to remind us of our direct dependence. The earth doesn't need us, we need the earth. Mother, we are dependent on Mother totally, 100%. And we try to remember that. So if somebody goes if somebody goes and we bury them, now we have cemeteries, but even so, we know enough that that is what's been called as Kchitoke, hallowed land. Kchitoke, that is special land. But all land is Kchitoa. But we place an extra layer of emphasis as for a grave site or a graveyard. And the reason I guess I mention this is there's a man over here that just got news a few minutes ago that his brother's wife, his sister-in-law, had just died. And I was standing outside over there, and he just come back to me. I said, Ani, for hello. And he came towards me and told me what was happening. He just got the news. His brother just called him, and his sister-in-law had just died. So I talked to him and said, where is he? And he's out in California for a naval reunion, but his wife is downstate or at the Indiana borderline, he was telling me, and she's been sick for 2 years with cancer. So I says, Bijat, follow me. We're going to smudge you. Now, what that means is we're going to take care of all of you, the emotional, the spiritual, physical, and the mental part. Because he's got to drive on the highway. And as you know, if you're driving on the highway and your faculties are not all there, you're impaired. So he's impaired by shock. So, and grief, sadness. So, this is, be with you shit. Follow me. We're going to smudge you. And I know I've been around enough death in my lifetime, what happens to me and what I see in people, regardless of whether they're niche or not. It's still a tearing, searing, hollowing out moment, yet it's part of life. And so we brought him upstairs, and I went and got one of our people. I says, I gave him some sema, tobacco. I says, Nantamushinam, in Bokkeo Nichkana, in Bokkeok. So I gave him some tobacco, which is, again, one of the sacred gifts when used properly, along with wingash, seagrass. So I gave him sema. Now, so right away they got together and looking around for other parts to use. And so we came up with wingash. Somebody had a wingash strand. It's braided like a braid, like you braid your children's hair or the way you braid your hair. And we got some shkude, which is fire, and proceeded to burn that wingash right there in the hallway, and using a container from a container like a tin lid as a container, and using some of that sema, sprinkled sema in there, along with the wingash. And no, we didn't sprinkle sema. I just handed it over to our friend, and then we went up, got up. When we came in, I sat the man down over here, Madavid, and I said, because we're in shock, you don't know what to do, so sit down before you fall down or run into something. So you got to tell people what to do when they're in shock. Madavid, want them liquid, drink this. So so he sat down. Bobby should wait for me. Bobby should. So I went and got our friend. We got the Quenes again together, made up of wingash, and then we came out and we smudged them. Now, what a smudge is, think of it as an incense if you come from a church group. I know the Asian group have their own forms of incense. The Anishinaabe people over here have our form of incense, asking for help from the greater power. And so we smudged him. So there's a smoke all over him. The man put his hand on top of his head and said some Namewin prayer. Namewin. Yinama Dishma Wanishnabe. Yinama. We gush yina cousin, Sema yina cousin. You put in his what in it. You put in his get the schmob. We job with two other shay. So I stood by him. And then the man took some Sema out from his own package and he gave it to the man with Mama gun bucket. Gun bucket. Jigwashmaba Sema did Andish in his left hand. So he gave him some Sema, put in his left hand. And he told him in the language, who hold this in your left hand, and when you go outside, you put it on the grass or on the tree. If you put it on the tree, put it on the east side. So after we did that, after we finished the prayers, we I went outside with our friend and I found a tree, and at the fork where it forks, we looked for the eastern direction, and I told him to put it there on the branch on the eastern side. So he's standing south, facing north, puts on the eastern side of the tree, and I'm standing over here to his right. He took his hat off, put it there, and he started talking to his family, to his sister, the one that had passed on, and all the people that know her, and all the people that know her. In Native America, these people are still alive. It's that they still exist. They're just not on this physical realm. So, and then I told him to hold on to that tree for support and talk to the tree, tell him what he's feeling and ask for help. So he did that. And that tree comes from Kya, Ngush. It's all part of our existence. The Tosema he put came from Ngusha, from the earth. And everything that's on our bodies now comes from the earth, or materials that have come derived from the earth. And after it was over, he says, I feel both relieved and confused. Relieved because he's glad that his sister is no longer here to suffer 2 years of cancer. Alkazuit in this cancer. So he's still here today. He said they're going to meet in Friday. It's downstate where the family lives. And if you see him, you might want to go give him a hug. Don't shake his hand. Give him a hug. His name is Joe. He's from Little Traverse Bay of Odawas. I'm Odawa. I'm Potawatomi. And some Ojibwa. So we're all the same people, Anishinaabe. So when we put that, as our friend Gary had said, put that Sema on the east side, it's the beginning of a new life for his sister, Anjip Manse Mino. Anjip Manse. Living all over again, but in a different way, beyond what we know here. So, this is actually the second time this happened to me. at a conference. I'm sure it's happened to many others, but for me, last time I was at a grief seminar, how to handle with grief and how to work with it, people grieving, and our people are grieving. Nishnabek, Sidayindamuk, Manadindamuk, Skadindamuk. And grief is universal, all people. One of the participants that was participating at that workshop with me, she was there with her husband, their kids, teenagers, young teenagers. One night, 2 nights into that conference, he died right in the hotel room there. Of course, that all threw us for a loop, as this one does for me. It's really, I don't even know the man, but yet it affects me. And that's all part of the grieving process. And then I asked the earth silently, give me strength, because I knew I had to do this workshop, and I had no idea what to do. Because I hugged that man, and I picked up that sadness. So if you hug him and feel sad after or heavy, or maybe you don't want to hug him. That's all right too. That's natural. Don't feel guilty. I asked the earth, okay, in English, to give me strength to come in here, hopefully talk about something concrete that will make sense. And life is death. Death is life. In Bowen, we call death Manzuin, we call life. Manzuin is death. It's all the same. It's all the same. You can imagine. So English, here cause an opportunity to smudge. Sema, Tumgi begin again. Sema, Tumgi begin again. Made a request for help with the Sema from our friend Gary. And then me and Gary went out, helped Joe. So he's still over here. He's walking around outside. He's better now. He's relieved, but now he can go on with the arrangements and not so much in shock. So we hear about the words of environment and ecology and all this stuff, and those are all good words. Those are all true. But for Native America, all this is Native American land. It's the blood, the bones, the bodies of our people, no matter if they're Arapaho, Cheyenne, Apache, Inuit. It's all the same. So we try to walk with reverence. And I know when I cut trees down, it hurts me. I know when I dig post holes for my yard, it hurts me. I put some sema down. Forgive me. Gosh. So we need to not be afraid. We need to talk about things in the language that make us uncomfortable. Yes, I'm cold, I am hungry, all that works. And see, is the kino enching the one of Mazim. In about me, the bit Shmina, Xquizin Kiship, Mijish Sagwin, near the one of Mazimino, Nangondam Nick. Minjidam go Ishagatakan. Ishpinigay Ishtoing, we ain't good in like Kinsino. Neither Shre, Obadick, Opoquendam. Needing like Kinsin Reggie Ash in the woman. Nangushi go pitching on you wash and none of you will give me what you're getting English. You got English get it. You got me the bottom. You know where? Kitastana on. Kitastana on. Kitastana on. Kinisatana on. Kinisatana on. Do you understand? Kinisatana Matsuit. You're Matsuit. You're Matsuit.
Nangadaba, Tani, chicken man. Mishki, Tagamasin, chicken, Gaban. Where I was from, I'm from I'm from Manitoulin, Ontario, and it's surrendered by Lake Huron. You know, it's a good place to live. It's a good place to be raised. It's all fresh water. And years ago, when I was young, once in a while, my dad would take us swimming, and the water was actually very clean. And water is survival in our lives today. Even when we walk outside here, it rained last night, and I say, "Kibi-san," it was cold rain coming down last night. In the language, we always describe what is happening. Kibi-san, it was very chilly rain last night. And sometimes people ask me where I come from. I say Manitoulin, Ontario. And one time I used to do construction before I started teaching. And I was down in Birmingham, Alabama. And Mabadosh Kwe and Gigwedge make Abish Punjabai. This colored lady asked me where I was from. I says, I'm from Manitoulin, Ontario. I said, and then I also told her that I was also from reservation. So she asked me, how come they let you off the reservation? So I didn't say nothing at first, but, you know, to get off the reserve, I says, this is actually an island where I was raised on. So we used to cross the ice in the middle of winter, take off from the reserve, I said. We run away from the reserve to make it down here. And it's awfully cold when you cross that open lake. And you look on the map, that Lake Huron's awfully big, I told her. I lied, you know. And you know, to be in that cold weather, our helper upstairs is telling us that he's changing this world. You know, for it to snow, he's changing things around. He's going to make it a cleaner world to live in during that period of time. And during this period of time, she asked me, at that one point, she asked me, what did you guys eat for this winter? Well, life starts all over again in March, April, and May. I said to her, my mom always had this big female mutt. And this mutt had 6 or 7 pups. And my mom would always tell us, don't get too attached to any one of the dogs. Don't get attached at all. And she would name the mutt January 1st, January 15th, January 31st. And this colored lady, she would ask me, she says, how come your mom did that? Hey, man, you know, come on, she says, well, you know that January 1st is a sad day for the dog. That's when he goes into the pot. We had hot dog. She said, yeah, hot dog. I said, yeah, we had hot dogs. Like hell. You know, during that period of time, you know, sadness always comes into mind. You know, when you're raised in a certain place for a certain amount of years, you get to miss your kinfolk. Like Nishnabemwin is always, if you speak my language, you're always sad to be, you know, in a society where they're speaking Mexican or English or something like that. And why can't I speak my language? Why can't these people learn my language? And many a times when I was out there doing construction, people would make fun of me. I was talking gibberish on the phone. To them, I was talking gibberish. To them, I was talking nothing but, you know, whatever they thought. But to me, I was the happiest times of my life when I spoke on that phone in the language with my mother. And to be down here, up here, you know, we came up here yesterday. And to be here yesterday was, I teach out at Ann Arbor, and Ann Arbor is already 79 degrees hot. And it's beautiful. And up here, it's, 54? It's not too nice, you know. But it's still beautiful, you know. And to hear these beautiful people, you know, here it's neither Australian or whatever, you know. but they make Pinchabachic, Pemazzichick, on the other side of the world. You think of those people too. That guy's already got a cold. He picked up a cold. He's also wearing a big, heavy coat inside. That tells us that he's not quite used to the hot, cold weather here. And to be involved with different nationalities where I teach, it's amazing how life goes on. Life goes on. Weather is definitely one subject we always teach. The cleanness of the weather, the badness, the cold, the wet, the rain, weak, the hot. People are always curious how to say the words in the language, which is, I am very glad to teach them how to say it. And weather is telling us all the time what needs to be changed, what's to be washed down the gutters, what's to be washed off, pollution, whatever, it's got to be washed off. And a lot of these times I hear of people doing strange things, they have these, all kinds of weird stuff. Like when I was young, we used to have to clean the yard this time of the year. I didn't like that too much. That was the work. And I was also raised on a farm. A man told us last night he was talking of growing their own vegetables. We did a lot of that when I was being raised. I didn't like being raised on a farm. Because being a farmer's kid is 18-hour days, which is not fun, And we had nowhere to run. We had no place to go except for Grandma. Grandma was another one that put a lot of sense in my mind, which I never learned to use till maybe 15 years ago. My grandma once told me, says, if you drink, Howard, you're going to get into a lot of trouble. I says to myself, what the hell does she know? She never goes anywhere. She knew. She knew way ahead of my time. She knew way before I was to get in trouble. And she knew that gas was going to be $3.40 about this time, about 35 years from now. She said the gas is going to be $3.20. She was right. And she knew that when we were put on this earth, we were just visitors. We were just put here from age one till we go. We were just passing on by. That's what that's what she would say. King. That's what she would say when you're passing through this earth. And listen to what these elders are teaching you. I was bullheaded. I didn't listen. I started listening 14 years ago. I started to pick up what they were saying. And when you leave here, she would say, you're only going to leave what you came with, which is right, But in that period of time, the earth was much greener. It was cleaner. And where she used to live at, I think there's a big garbage dump now where she used to live at, backyard somewhere. It wasn't there before, but now there is. And a lot of the stuff, what I heard from my elders from the past years, I learned to use in class now. They would tell us stories of all the hardships they had over the years. And, I'm starting to put that on paper too. It's not, I didn't do this years ago. I was just too busy living another world. You ever see that thing, Another World, on TV? I was kind of like that. I had my own little private world. And last year I heard a guy getting a job up here in Northern Michigan University. Time changes people in a very strange way. I last seen Kenneth about 36 years ago. We used to play a lot of hockey together. And we also had Jesuit teachers, Jesuit sisters. We had those, they were our favorite people in years, I would say, I would put it the other way. I didn't want to be Jesuit. I don't want to be anything but, I didn't want no Jesuit people around me when I was that age. I didn't want no Roman Catholics around me because I was, being in that time of years when I was very young, our parents raised us to be regular kids. When we got to school, somebody else beat us, The nuns beat us. Not my parents never beat me, but the nuns did. That's another world I came into, and then I heard that. I carried that hurt for a long time, and a guy asked me, he says, "Does that still bother you today?" No. You know why it don't bother me today? I've learned to love myself, If you don't like something, accept it and learn to love it. That's what I do today. I've learned to love myself. As this world turns, today, people will say, I heard that guy speak over there before, I don't want to listen to him again. That's good, I'm not going to lose no sleep over that. But these people that are saying they're going to walk around Lake Michigan this coming summer, I like to meet at least one of them again. Last year I did meet 3 of them. That was pretty good. I loved what they were doing, but I didn't know this year I was going to be here this year doing this. And to be able to be such alone someplace like when I got here last summer or last fall when I came to visit Kenneth, I was expecting to see a little boy, 11 years old or 10 years old. That's what I was expecting. I almost fainted when I see them. This big, this round, hair long, white like mine. That's a shock. The last time, I actually met him at the ice rink over here, and that was probably the last time I seen him at the ice rink 35 years ago, something like that. I used to play hockey together. That was it. But to be here is something awesome. People are nice, they're beautiful, they're smiling faces, and my dad always says. My dad always used to say, he says, "Presidento, always listen to the other speakers." And I've actually learned to do that over the years. I've heard Jim yesterday speak. I learned another guy speak. Raven, I heard him speak. That was awesome to hear this guy speak. And to put that together, it's going to take me a while to figure them people out, but I'll figure them out. And last September, I was so hurt. I walked into a situation where I wasn't, I didn't know how to figure this out, but I was at a place where I got myself into without knowing it. I walked into a university, big university, the biggest one in Michigan. And I kind of ask myself every morning, how a nut, probably say a nut talks to himself in the mirror. I did that every morning last summer, and I asked for guidance. Creator, help me. Guide me where I'm supposed to be going. And he did. And during that period of time, I've learned a lot to deal with people. And I think Magri had to deal with me a lot too. I've still got my own mean streaks in me too. I'm an ex-hockey player, so I throw in my elbow once in a while. So to be in a situation like that, there was an elder speaker that brought the language to the University of Michigan. His name was Hat. And when I got there, he was in the 75 or something like that. He was old. And I didn't like him too much. He used to call me Casey, even though he was old himself. He called me old. Didn't like that. How come this old guy's calling me old? He's a lot older than I am, I still got that attitude. About a few months ago, he passed on. What he was planning me, what he was calling me an old man, that and the old man there now, he was just putting that in my head that you will be the old man here soon. That's what he was doing to me. And I used to kid with him, you know. You know, I go up from, I say, 1 inch, you know. I do that, you know. Hap was kind of character that he was very slow in life. And I could find myself doing that with Mother Earth, you know. It's a time where people come to realize that, you know, you've come to live a good life. I heard of people saying they did their time in Vietnam. I heard people doing their time up north towards Guatemala Lake, their homeland is polluted and all that. And, you know, where I'm at, you know, it's kind of beautiful, it's nice, it's quiet. But to hear of people say, you know, I got this. I got these two here. And they're a lot of trouble sometimes. And Hap passed away, and you know, there was a lot of turmoil there for a while, but you got to learn to accept that. You know, you got to learn to walk with it. And sometimes you got to carry on where somebody left off. Like many of us might not be here next year, but somebody else got to carry on. And I've also came across people that are learning the language here, which is very, very nice. You know, it's nice to hear some people that are taking the language courses here and learning it. You know, some places they're having a lot of problems with the language. But at least they're trying. You know. And I also know that some of us will pick it up faster and some of us will pick it up slower. And Magani's one of them people I've been with for about a year, and she's learned to pick up a lot of language. I could joke with her now without her getting mad. You know how women are, you know, they're very temperamental, you know. And to be, like they say, to be a woman is something you got to walk with. I had to learn that when I was very young with my mom, you know. I think my dad learned the hard way. But I learned quite at a very young age that I had to respect her. You know, my dad was kind of different, you know. He kind of tried to stomp around in the house once in a while, and my mom would always tell him, you know, if you're going to do that, you belong outside. Or you belong in the barn with the horses. That's where the horses stomp, you know. You know, that's the way my mom was. She always had an answer for something. And people always talk about alcoholism. Okay, here's the truth. I was an alcoholic too for a lot of years. And my dad drank too, you know, but not to an extent that like I did. But one weekend I was definitely an angel. I wasn't drinking. I was definitely an angel that weekend. And the reason why was I wanted some money so I could leave Sunday night, gas money. I was very nice that weekend. I was very nice, definitely nice with my dad. I don't know how he got into it. He came home drunk that Sunday morning, and he wanted some more money. And this went on for, you know, half an hour. I was sitting halfway up the stairs. I might have been 20 years old, 21 years old, and I was sitting halfway up the stairs. I'm listening to this jabbering, you know. My dad would say, give me some money. My mom would say, no, you go to church. My dad said, give me some money. My mom would say, go to church. And my mom would finally said, my dad says, what I said was, that's the reason why Jesus Christ put this liquor on this earth to drink. That's why I want to drink some more. And my mom looked at him and he says, did you ever hear of Jesus Christ being a falling down drunk? Yeah. You know, my dad never got, you know, he got it. You know, he kind of got up and listened and he went outside and sat on the porch. You know, he got it, you know. But my mom was very instrumental in raising his 10 kids. And I always talk about my family. You know, you could split this room right in half. Half of us speak the language, and half don't. Why is that? Because that's what my mom sold the farm animals and started working out, and the rest of my family didn't have the privilege to learn the language. And to this day, it's still like that. You know, you could split my family. All of us, most of us would be speaking the language one side of the house, and the other would be speaking English. You know, that's how sad it is to lose the language. And to carry on with what these guys are doing about cleaning the earth, that's also, you know, we should clean up our acts too and start bringing the language back to our people. You know, it's hard. I know it's hard. And Maganit is trying the hardest. I think one of the people I know of that's trying the hardest is Maganit here, and with her two kids, I'm just tagging along now. If she tells me say this, I say it. You know, she probably has something to say. We always tell kids to say something in the language. And to be around these kids is a blessing for me because, you know, my mother said one time, 4 years ago, she says, I was at Brimley Community College listening to some lady speaker speak. And I was there all weekend. And I was on a 2-week holiday from my regular job in Grand Rapids. And my mom, I was going to call her Friday, but I put it off. I was going to call her Saturday, I put it off. I was going to call her Sunday morning, I put it off. So I finally called her Sunday afternoon at 4:30. And, you know, I had money, and I was a little bit like a Scrooge, you know. I didn't want to spend money at the restaurant to eat, so they were feeding me the 3 good meals a day, so I stayed there all weekend. You know, I'll save. I'll have more money to gamble next week. Which I did, you know. But I was on a 2-week holiday, and I called my mom Sunday afternoon at 4:30. I go, honey. She says, hi. Where were you? I says, no. She asked me if I was drunk. He says, no. You know, being I'm still an alcoholic, but a dry alcoholic, so she kind of asked me where I was. I told her I was at Brimley Community College listening to people that are speaking the language. I actually said I was listening to people that are trying to bring back the language to this community here in Brimley. Oh, she says, she got talking away, we talked away, and once in a while we get back to the language. Keep shaking down. Did you like being there? I said, I really enjoyed when I was there. And we carry on somewhere else, and she come right back to the language again. Kid not talking again. Did you really enjoy what the ladies were saying? I said, yeah. No, I mean, yes, I really enjoyed what they were saying. So, you know, Howard, she says, I got my grandkids here. I got my great-grandkids here. I got my great-grandkids here. You know what happens when I ask them something in the language? They laugh at me, she says. They actually laugh at me, You know, that hurts, she said. So we carried on again, and we talked to something else again, and she says, Howard, towards the end, she says, Howard, if you really want to do that, you should really actually get to help the people teach the language. You know, I would like for you to do that. So I thought of that for about 15 minutes. You know, we talked, and I actually, towards the end, I told her I'll do that. So from that 2-week holiday I had from Grand Rapids, from that company I worked for, I'm still on that 2-week holiday. That was 4 years ago. And look at me now, you know. And I think Margaret's got to have something to do with these kids here, and I'll get out of the way.
Fluent old Anishinaabe men. Relax and just listen. Fiona the boss. So we'll just stay sitting here because it's so true. You never know what you'll learn. I think it's a really good example of you just have to hang out and see what you learn. But on this page that we put together, which seems like a year ago now, but I think was just Monday, we put some sentences so that as you, if you're people, how many people here are people that have taken classes or either speak already or are interested in speaking Anishinaabe? So it's a lot, because a lot of the people are from around here. So these sentences are specifically related to some of the things I knew they would talk about. And now, Shannon, do you want to, we'll say them. What we typically do is we have sentences that are complete sentences, and they demonstrate some of the grammar, but we try not to hit people over the head with it. And we also try to make it so that you're learning something culturally significant. So I don't really care if they memorize how to read a Myers ad in Ojibwe or, do some of the things that are somewhat mundane or more material. But these things that have the lessons that they carry and constantly teach us, these were important. So we often go through and read them out loud. Then you're going to read them with me. Is that what we'll do? And then Howard reads them too. You want to read them too, Howard? You're just going to make us do it. All right, we'll take our turn. But then the little ones, you have pictures that you even drew to go with them. So should we show them this page, how we go through it? So the first one is Ka bazinda me manda gikiryak mina debajmo tadien wane jabwitoyin manda ke. So now what you guys have to do is help. We go through it little by little and then read it back, right? Okay? But you guys all have to help. So you have to say, what do you say if you want them to help you? Not emotion. Not emotion. So you tell them all that. You hold it up. Say, not emotion.
Not emotion.
No. Ka bazinda me. I'm just reading off the back of this sheet that we had handed out. Oh, I bet she doesn't have one. Thank you very much. So, we'll just do a little bit. Ready? Ka bazinda me. Ka bazinda me. Manda. Bim squad mo what? Bim squad sodom what? Bim squad sodom what? Which if you hear those little parts of the word, you hear the bim squad sodom, they're like, yep, walking around it. And the what is they are doing it. So there's no, the pronouns are just attached right to the word. So, Chigaming, Michigan, Ejinkade.
Michigan is a
Bonagamic, or Kache. Adamo is to help, but now this one is saying we all need to help them do it. So, Nadamo Dane,
Nadamo Dane,
Quinoa Gonda,
Quinoa Gonda,
Shkmad Sijik,
Shmad
She's doing it in her dreams, no? Jesus, we Minostige. Jesus, we Minostige. And that is the sun shining